Yes, that's what's going to be that data. And so one way you can do that is by looking at cohesive subgroups. I'm going to show you some strategies here for how one could look at cohesive subgroups. So some ways to look at cohesive subgroups and kind of zoom, what I like to call zoom in on is, well, one, look at attributes. So, what are some attributes that we can use? Let's say we had a whole mess of, technological data. So let's add code, we map out the code spread in there. Okay. What attributes might we want to zoom in on? So we look at the spreads. What attributes might help us? Now, other attributes, non-relational data. But give me some examples of that. What? What are they called? Okay, yeah. Birth city, national origin, then that might be useful attribute data. Previous health history, pre-existing health conditions. Preferably ones that you don't want to change overnight. Like actually we all have that as teenagers, goes away, right? Like the thing. But like if you're type 1 diet, yeah. Let's yeah, let's what else? Age, would gender possibly be useful? I mean, there was some data on we're having that unfortunately. The men had higher death rates. What might be explaining that? You're laughing. That's stupid. There you go. What's that? Okay, yeah, exactly. So there's some stories going on. Men are culturally different. This and insurance companies have figured that they charge differential amounts of versus male versus female. I hate to tell you this, boys, but I say this as a man. I can put all males from age 16 to roughly 24 in some kind of states. It's not a problem. We deal with 90% right. Just it's I mean, people see that versus you are young man or young man to make it that. But I look at it. I mean, did between the ages of say, I don't know, 15 to 16 and mid 20s. The brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. That goes for everybody. Us men, we tend to be more impulsive, more prone to violence in that group. Which is why I recruit soldiers in that. Exactly true. Culture related recruiting skills. Okay, so like cultural, sociological background. So what else? Relatedly, there could be a whole bunch of stories causation. There you go. Drinking. Particularly in certain age groups. That could affect how their body responds to COVID. Yeah. Finding jobs. We're seeing this really interesting I think this is a lot such a long conversation with rich. Why are we're trying to I had sort of people like Joe Rogan. What is the manosphere talking about? There's things going on in our side. They play a lot of video games. A lot of men aren't going to college. I think they say they're going to college. That can lead to some a lot of jobs that there might be a ceiling on wages. And go further into knowledge, I mean, yeah, maybe all. Yeah, so yeah, Say God, say that you need that. Wait, what you don't need, what, like, I mean, say, all you need is insurance. Oh, and then it's taking 200 versus things. Uh, what bottom line is we're converting increasingly to a knowledge economy. Some of the highest paid jobs are going to be going to knowledge workers. And so if you have men in this society, like I have this in my own, so I was thinking this, it shouldn't mention. So, he did good money and everything. But he was always talking down about college or students. The guy shouldn't even care, shouldn't be about it. There was like this whole movement of anti-education. If you listen to that culture and then you go into the college out, there's a lot of customers. You're unhealthy. Now you may be saying, well, what does this have to do with domestic terrorism? We're doing everything. Because we just walked downstairs in this class where neo-Nazis will say, hey, let's go on a tour of empty factory buildings, rusted out in Detroit. They're like, well, why'd you bring us here? I'm like, this is my primary group. This is where people lost jobs. They feel hopeless. They're angry and they want an explanation. And I'm going to give them an answer. It's not system. It has everything to start. Okay. So you might want to, when you get a network, there might want to zoom in on. You might want to zoom in on race versus ethnicity. Do you guys know the distinction between race and ethnicity? Yeah. Okay, tell me. Uh, Asian. Who's that wrong? You might throw Native American in there. As an ethnicity, there's like Spanish, Honduran. Okay. So yes, so generally they throw that in the category of Latino. Okay. So let's make the distinction here. Race is about phenotype. Phenotype is outward expression of it's immutable, fancy constitutional law term or unchangeable. Okay, ethnicity is similar but slightly different. Ethnicity takes into account culture. So it's usually race plus culture. Okay, so let me give you the example of my wife. My wife is basically white. She's from Mexico. She's a Latino. She's basically white and pinwhite. That's a term in Spanish for light skin. Um, if you went back enough generations, you would find Native American. And in fact, we talk about that in the family. But she's basically Caucasian. But ethnically, she's definitely Latino. So we have this like, so there are options on both the race category and in the ethnicity category. It's like, well, my this or my this, my this or my this. And for Latinos, there are decisions to be made about how to answer those things. And just race and ethnicity are actually at this stage. Yes. We should be aware of those and understand what those terms actually mean. Okay. It's all socially constructed. If we have to have like that whole discussion, first, race versus ethnicity and all of those things, we could choose different categories, right? And over time, we will likely as a society choose different categories. Brazil, for example, there are 40 racial categories. In Mexican society, if you went back to the colonial period, you had they literally called them the It's like the Bloods here in the United States, those original people who came over on the Mayflower who acted like the original Americans. Those were Spaniards in Mexico. And then over time, they intermarried with the local indigenous population. And the intermarriage there was called mestizo. And so after the Mexican Revolution, they actually called it the mestizo race. So after the Mexican Revolution. But for a time, it was mestizo. But you could pay the priest and say, well, the baby is light skinned. We'll call the baby castizo, which was like in this racial hierarchy, slightly better than being mestizo and closer to being like the Spaniards that were in charge of dominating. Eventually, Prohibition eliminated that by saying without those racial elements by just saying we're all one mestizo race. But even today, if you look at Mexican society, making the statistics agency, they basically did this study, and they basically found that there was a direct correlation between lighter complexion and higher socioeconomic status. So you have to be aware of those things. There's a fundamentally different system in Latin America, at least in race and society. Anyway, so attributes. That might be one way to zoom in. I zoom in on race. I zoom in on ethnicity and see what's going on in terms of the overall structure of the network. Male, female, income, all of those types of things. That's one way to zoom in. You might look at different components. Are they directed networks? So a strong versus weak component. Imagine a water flow network. You've got a water source and it goes to a processing plant. Okay. The water goes in one direction and one direction, right? So the water is connected over here, but it goes backwards the other way. This isn't one if you're looking at the structure of the networks. It's like, oh, well, these guys are connected. Well, no, not really. It flows only one way. There's no way. So you can have a strong or a weak component. We'll go all. And components are any disconnected component, right? So remember how I showed you networks and we got this big connected portion and then a bunch of isolates on their own? Each one of those isolates is a component. And there could be like another component that's disconnected that has more connections but isn't connected to the main component. So that's another component. I'm going to explain to you today what K-cores are and what the Newman, it's actually the Gervin-Newman community detection algorithm. Okay. So what is a focus on subgroups? It's a focus on clusters or relatively dense segments of it. Why? Why do we care about this? Are there any subnetworks within the larger network? Are there any parts of the network in which there might be intimate interaction among members? Why might these subnetworks form? Do they appear to form due to homophily? So what is homophily? What does homo mean? Same. Okay. What does philia mean? File. To like. Homophily would be affinity for sameness, i.e., birds of a feather flock together. Dungeons and Dragons fans always hang out together. Stuff like that. We might find that in a network structure. We might find frat guys take all the same classes together and then share the exams. And have a little file in their house. And they share the exams. So the people who take the class in the future have easy access to all the answers. Or examples of the test answers. Just one hypothesis. I've got I got something. You're supposed to wait your reactions. So what other things that are birds of a feather and flocking together? Do cops think about this? Yes. What will cops tell you? Ah, okay. Yeah. So you're thinking about it on the blue network side, blue side, and blue network side. What will they say about your associations on the other side? What's that? Where there's smoke, there's fire, i.e., well, let's go deeper than the class, right? Like concretely, what does it mean? What will a cop tell you about your association? If you hang out with criminals, you're going to become one. You play in mud, you're going to get dirty. You are who you hang out with. Now, we have an entire legal system that is against that, right? No guilt by association. We'd rather let an innocent man go free than, or let a guilty man go free on a case than put an innocent man in jail. Was this guy who got him to a cross? Did he do it? No, it's perfectly innocent, right? So the entire thing about Western civilization was we built an entire system with this idea in mind. There was this guy that would walk on the water. There was that other guy. You know he was innocent. He nailed him to a cross anyway. Right? So we set up the entire legal system. But cops will tell you, if you play live, you're going to get hurt. So mind your relations, mind your associations. And there are ways criminal justice system operationalizes this all the time. If you're a felon and you've been released on parole, are you allowed to hang out with other felons? No. You'd be strongly frowned upon if you knowingly associate with other felons. Why? The idea is they're trying to set a simple rule for you to minimize your association with likely to be pressure to go to law. And you will engage yourself in an act that will result in recidivism. Okay, so why do these to have distinct motivations or unique sets of goals among subnetworks? Yeah, we can imagine something happening very much an opposite. You could have dissimilar actors get together in small groups. Why would this happen? I'm thinking through why would dissimilar actors get together? I'll sure. I'll subtract. And why might that be this? You know what? You know what? I should have another good house. And you pass for years. Years that you were that. Oh, really? I think whatever else, diving into the logistics. You sail, you want to do that one. So at different levels, you might see homologies isolated. So the schools, because the people need time further. Or I only trust the people who are my in. It might be very different. Yeah, kinship bonds, allowing us to put this criminal network together because there's a higher level of trust. So we can look at any network with multiple layers. You can have a criminal network that's operational. Hey, Chad, you know what? Can I call you later? All right, that's fine. So you can have operational connections, but then you can have kinship connections. And that can all be in the same network. Create multiple networks out of this. All right. So this network that is looking at, I think it was like a Twitter. It's a period. Yeah, they put in the little green guy. This Russian soldiers. There was up in England. And they basically took a back and takeover of an entire section of Ukraine in the year 2014. They say historically this is always part of Russia. And this was the beginning of, because you lived years without a world war or great powers coming off of the ship. And one day, right under Ukraine's nose, and the Ukrainians kind of realized this is their wake up. This was their moment by we can't afford to be robots anymore because they're going to be less bit by bit. Well, they're just going to take us over and roll over us. And the Crimea was that moment. And so something interesting started to happen. U.S. military, Ukrainians, the Ukrainian military was like, no, we're paying attention to what you're saying. We're going to train on NATO lines. Like, we know that we have real problems. And so when that was all happening behind the scenes. So in 2022, when Russia pulls in these that they're just going to roll over Kyiv, oh man, I knew people who had gone to these specialized military classes with Ukrainian officers. And they were telling me, yeah, like I'm getting texts from Ukrainians. The things you see in the news that the Russians are just going to roll in, they're like, my friends on the ground are telling me, no, we're keeping Russia. Everywhere we face Russia, it was just like, Russians. Stop. They're just going to throw bodies at the problem. They're just going to fire artillery blindly and no more artillery. But man for man, you think yeah, most of them like how they're Canadian North Korean troops. Yeah, oh, tanks are like from the 60s. 1966. It's impressive what they're doing in 1966, and they got a lot of them eventually. Uh, the countries that stand up to the Russians, they find, look at Finland. I mean, like, the country is a mass Russian grave. I mean, Finnish resistance is hilarious. You guys could understand how Finnish resistance works. Every person in their society will understand. Every bridge is rated to love. Every person in that country has a job suit during the invasion. It's practiced every 6 months. If they never say who their enemy is, but if they're getting attacked from anywhere in the Middle East, they're getting flanked. The entire country is set up to be funneling choke points with kill zones. One of the funny, one of the pitch shows is, those like, click on the stoplight, Kruger on a robot. It's like, they show a snowy picture and it's like, find the Finnish sniper. And every single box is checked because there's a sniper everywhere. Like, that is how the Finns have set up their society. To basically be like, yeah, when don't invade us, we're going to die slowly. We're going to take hundreds of thousands of people with us. We're going to get you funneled into choke points. And this is going to be the place where you really die. And yes, you might ultimately win, but then we're going to have this specific resistance after that. Basically, their goal is just that you can run out of it. Awesome. The South Koreans also have a similar strategy, the whole scorpion strategy. We're going to let them come in, invade, we're going to fall back, and then we're going to counterattack with the Americans, and it's going to be over. But we know that the North Koreans are going to be able to overwhelm us with artillery. So they're just going to bomb that DMC that's full of landmines. They're going to carpet it, artillery barrage, we get through overwhelming numbers. I don't know actually. But and then the South Koreans will fall back to its space for time, just like the Russians did during World War II. And they didn't counter us. That was their whole battle plan. At this point, I don't know about the years before. Yes. My first semester here, my dorm roommate was a foreign exchange from Finland. Yeah. And it's funny because I was good with the drivers talking about. Yeah. Have you done that? Christian has to probably 6 to 8 months in the service in that additional important. And his specialty is in OS for the radio. Yeah, he's the guy that goes out with like bringing trucks to like his car would have anything back to wherever. Yeah, and the coordinate fire truck stuff. Yeah. what is it, radio and like news broadcasting now for the government. Yeah, the main yeah. So he's like, it's really good. So prior to 2022 invasion, you had the 2014 taking over Crimea. As soon as the Ukrainians woke up and realized they could start training hard, people started paying attention to, okay, now there's information warfare. It's hybrid warfare, gray zone warfare that's happening for hearts and minds, happening online. This is a data set that is identified by, you know, the pink is Russian, either bots or pro-Russian accounts, and the green is pro-Ukrainian accounts. Fine. He's funny, you know, the most strategy. It's not really strategy, it's still a lot of it's that you have no idea. Yes, he's always been the Russian nuclear war now. I won't say that they have no strategy. I step back and I just say, okay, I have this Russian. Look at Russia. Russia is a continental power. Means they are a land power. If you are a land power, you are always vulnerable because you take everything up to the sea. And you're always vulnerable. So if you're Russia, you're always afraid Germany is going to invade. Or the United States, or Iceland, Poland, or et cetera, et cetera. That's if you're Russia. What that means is there are these strategic points you want to take, like mountain ranges, that make your large step easier to defend. Why do continental powers tend to be authoritarian and subject? Well, why? Well, because if you have a big land army, you need a big land army to be able to defend this wide open space. It can be taken very fast, right? What a global empire take over this vast Chinese steppe. It was like this vast flatland, 180 mountains to make it more difficult to overtake another area. Whereas Europe is just like populated with these tiny little principalities. Part of that is the geography. Geography is really important. Why is Germany this industrial superpower and it barely has any water, which is really important for trade? It is loaded with rivers. They can use big industrial stuff around it, easily and cheap. Uh, so the thing is, if you keep a big army around, what happens when the general decides he would be a better leader? You have a coup d'etats all the time. Goes to the state. Somebody within the government just overtakes the government. So you have this constant authoritarianism. You can't get democracy going. So you have this crappy, suboptimal authoritarian regimes. You know how I feel? I love democracy. I love the United States of America. I love the U.S. Constitution. I think uh, democracy plus basic free markets, with some intervention and good rule of law and property rights. This is an awesome winning combination. We have this awesome winning combination, and right now we keep at both the right, the extreme right, and the extreme left are like, oh, this is broken. I mean, what's your GDP growth numbers lately? It's freaking amazing. What's broken? What's broken? It's freaking amazing. What's broken? I want national health care, me too. Pay slightly higher taxes. Fix that for you. Just gotta have a political will. That's the key. Or just increase our payroll back, all have national health care, make it better, cheaper. Let Medicare negotiate the prices. I say billions of dollars about eliminating USAID. You guys know what USAID is? This is probably one of the most important and cheapest things we do to protect American power. It started in the 1960s. John F. Kennedy, he loved counterinsurgency. You got really good Green Berets. Green Berets were American Special Forces, not your special ops, sky ninjas. Special forces guys who could actually speak a foreign language. Then would go and would train up 1,000 local fighters to fight on your behalf. That's what the Green Berets were. Well, your counterinsurgency strategy on a global scale was, hey, let's win over the hearts and minds. Let's improve people's standards of living. Let's give them clean water. Let's give them cheap vaccines so they don't die young. Fuck, right? Let's get them clean water. Let's get them. Let's show them how to raise crops that are disease resistant so they don't die. So we spend about $42 billion a year on that. And makes billions of people's lives better. It's awesome. Now they know it's strapping. $22 million, I need sleep. That is the toilet paper budget from the federal government. That is a chump change. It's actually a really good deal what we get out of US ID. Yeah. Solid voter share like they really was like Trump and Clinton with package like that. And it should be because I saw that when Elon Musk did like their new so yeah, like this is cannot shut down something that Congress by statute. Yeah. That's a lot of leeway. As long as there's not a law. But if there is a law, you gotta follow. It's like right it wrong. When I saw like Kennedy, like they were denying the Department of Efficiency like question view their financial records. I just find that interesting. I don't services. What? Yeah. You wouldn't be allowed to have access to that. Also, what statutory regulation business you can't have access to that? Like, you think I can just walk in as a private citizen to a US government agency and see the financial statements and use it? I mean, I can do a Freedom of Information Act request and sort of, it's like, wow, things, man. But this is odd and strange. We will see how it plays out in whether or not they allow. There has been this general trend. Democrats and Republicans more and more expansive executive authority. And we've all done that. We all watched it happen. There's Clinton, Senator Bush, W. Bush, it just kept creeping, and now we're seeing a private citizen have full access. Now, but here's the thing though. Donald Trump can say, no, you know what? We're not doing it. He can't. The idea that like some college interns, and they seem like really smart guys. Like, don't get me wrong, like one of those like trying to use AI to figure out dead sea scrolls and like what's written on them. Like, you can't help but like this girl. Like, I can't help but like it. But like, what experience does he have to go in and eliminate USAID program that's done amazing things and wins over hearts and minds on behalf of the United States? But this argument of like, okay, we're going to America first, let's America first. Make the argument. Like, make the argument that it doesn't. Oh, well, it's 2020. No, it's not. It's great. It's great. It's going to I mean, you can disagree. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to feel about it. But it's like, we have terrorists and then we don't have terrorists. Like, what is between terrorists on Mexico and Canada? You go the thing cracks me up is you realize we're all the same for construction. Okay? Like, who wants to have a cheap house? I don't think we all have access to cheap houses for you know, housing in this country. Like, it's wild that we put terrorists on this. But, neither here nor there. This is an example of information warfare. And we are in an era of information. And this is a network where you've got Russians and Ukrainians, and these are pro-Ukrainian accounts versus pro-Russian accounts. This is a quick way to use attribute data to look at a subgroup within the network. So then we can filter by the attribute in Gephi, and we can just set down to the Ukrainians, and we can see what the structure of the Ukrainian network looks like. Then we could further color by language and then extract English language. Now, more recently, just my experience looking online, it's really funny. The Ukrainians love to make fun of Russians. And the way they make fun of Russians is like, we all speak English and you know. So we talk American. And they make fun of them like, you idiots, you think you're tougher than us. Well, we got tough friends and we can communicate with them directly because we value being able to speak. And so you might go online and see direct, real life. I noticed not a lot of Ukrainians. And have you guys ever heard of NATO fellas? NATO is North Atlantic Development Organization. So it's basically Westerners who were pro-Ukrainian, and they got the Shiba Inu, those like little dogs, just like on Dogecoin. They took that dog that was memified, and then all of them get a little, they get like their own avatar, and they like dress themselves up, so they call themselves NATO fellas. What they're doing is they're saying, we're going to attack the Russians on this platform. And anytime the Russians post, we're going to attack them. And basically, it's a way of, it was an organic thing they got started. It was like this online social movement to say, hey, we're going to engage directly in the information warfare against the Russians and on this issue. So you'll see those kinds of things emerge. Well, what you see is that the Ukrainians speak better English, so they're actually better in a decentralized fashion. Now, Russians, because the state government, the state agencies are going to be backing it, they're probably going to be good at setting up one kind of accounts, so they're going to be good at setting up emails. If you have government resources back, well, you're going to set up bot accounts, and you're probably going to start throwing some large language model AIs, and you're going to put out like unified message. But that unified message words over and over again, that's easily identifiable. Ah, that's a bot. I used to got 100 accounts. You know, you can tell when somebody's following you and they're a bot, right? You just tell. It's like they have like they're following 1 million people, they have 2 followers. The attractive woman that's following you, that's a bot account, or a honeypot attempting to manipulate it. You guys know what a honeypot is, right? It's where they're just trying to manipulate. And don't fall for it if it's somebody who, right? So there's an American general, and he thought he was flirting with the attractive Ukrainian woman who was Russian, pretending to be attractive, right? And he was speaking out actually tactical information. In the civil network, a civil network is really connected if all actors are connected by a path. We can walk from each actor to another if we ignore the direction of the ties if there is one. So if we ignore the direction of the ties, we don't form. And everything is connected. That's a weak component. A strong component is if we care about the direction of the ties, then we can get everywhere inside that component. Right? So in a weak component, V1 and everybody in this network can access V1. But in a strong component where we actually care about directionality, V1 is actually inaccessible from V4, right? V2 is completely disconnected. That's a component unto itself no matter what. But a weak versus a strong component is taking into account direction of the ties. So weak component, we've got V2 and this component over here, so there's 2. Another example of weak components. What's the node distance from node A to node B? 0 or infinite. You can't actually get from node A to node B, right? You couldn't get there. They're completely disconnected. There is no path. Okay, now, so those, that's a separate, those are separate components. Okay, so in a directed network, a subnetwork is strongly connected if all actors connected by a path can walk from each actor to another to obey the direction of tiles. So here we got V2 and V1 are their own components because not everybody can get over to V1. Okay? And then V3, 5, and 4 are their own. So directed data, phone data will be directed because you call a person, they receive the call. Financial data, you transmit money when that's not bidirectional. Each transaction is a direction. And then we can visualize by color the strong components. So those are components. Now, let's go into K-cores. We've got lots of pinwheels here. This is a huge network. These are lots. Each dot you're seeing here is actually lots of little small ties. You've got 3,000 nodes with roughly slightly more than 3,000 ties. So a K-core is a mass of actors, all of them are connected to some number K of other group members. Okay, so what is a K-core? So let's say a K-core is 5. Looking at a K-core of 5. I just choose that number, 5. Means 5 people are in this subgroup are connected to 5 other people. I'm just saying 5 other people. So we're going to illustrate this. One K-core has everyone who's connected to at least one other person in the group. Results in the same as a weak component. A 2 K-core has only those people who are connected to at least 2 other people in the group. A maximal group of actors, all of whom sorry. These are nested subgroups based on each other's actor degree centrality. The distribution of higher K-cores may indicate insights about the distribution of power throughout networks, i.e. assuming connectedness indicates levels of actor power throughout the network. Okay, so here, we got this subnetwork, and look, here's a 3 K-core. This here is 3 K-core. All 3 people in here are connected to at least 3 others. This person is only 1. They've only got 1 connection. This person is only 2. This whole group over here is 3. That's the basic idea. So 1 K-core, 1 core, this is almost everything in the same one. 2 K-core, they're filtering these out. The network will get smaller and smaller. 3 K-core, 4 core, 5 core, 6 core, 7 core, 8 core, 9 core, 10 core. That's probably where it would stop. So now we're going to do Newman-Urban section algorithm, sometimes called Urban-Newman. Let's say you have a big network and you don't like these other methods, whether it be K-cores or ego network, where you can zoom one go directly now. Let's say you want to have another math way to get at subgroups. Formal explanation: subgroups are defined as having more ties within and fewer ties between groups than would be expected in a random graph of the same size with the same number of ties. It focuses on edge between groups. Okay, so imagine I created a random network, and a computer just randomly assigns nodes and randomly assigns ties. Would this even resemble a real network in the real world? Probably not. Most networks obey power laws. Okay. What does that mean? Power laws means some ties get all the attention. Some nodes get all the attention. And most get very little. Okay, so with the internet, all of you go to what website first? Google. Okay. So Google, you go to Google. Why? Why do you go to Google first? What does Google give you access everywhere? Okay. So what did Google do? Google goes out and on a daily basis, back in the like 2 hours, And we do our school of this. Surely not. Thing that is publicly available. Accessible to you via search, assuming you follow. No. Now there's a dark web, that's gonna be different, and then the deep web is like your entry. That's not supposed to be public access. Absolutely. You're not gonna have that. They can't get it. They shouldn't have this. So deep web, dark web being very illegal stuff, or journalists trying to hide something from government, which actually support the side web. It's actually designed by the state. Forever. Got it? Yeah. The dark web. I would say it's yeah, they can have one. Very Asian. So yeah, it's a well. Patients. And uh, but I mean, people does think about policy. I think it's really becoming trend, and journalists want to be able to share and exchange information. But that, I think that's what's that? That's the denominator of Washington Spirit from the love of the denominators. So you mean give me the denominators, which were in anger listed there? Yes, I think they not there. Yes, they can publish it, but what we're talking about is at least random and you're a journalist and they are violating your right of rights on you. I don't know why you publish them. Well, look, story together. They're fine. The idea is that, you know, the fourth system, that you would be able to have some mechanism of actually secure encrypted communications without some proxy addresses and all that. So, I mean, we can come up with reasons why this might be potentially better, right? But 99% of the things that the government and also the government develops do are amazing. The government's giving away for free. I mean, the chicken you eat. Where did the chicken eat up? Uh, was juicy chicken breasts. Who developed in the 1950s, the new also without honest. So, yeah, you're going to have the chicken for being way free. So, you all have more calories for chicken. It's going to change the way we do Chick-fil-A now. It's going to change everything. I can see the world. You put the technology of the 20th century to that's the US Air Force. Well, still going to take on US Air Force. You give away for it. Oh, you like that touchscreen technology? Put it in Apple. That technology was given away by the US government. Oh, you like having small computers? It was pretty cool. We went to space and you do calculations on a small compressed area and you develop this technology. You need to have these small computers. What exactly does the practice do here, Bob? What exactly is it? Shit, there's the opposite. Oh, I got lots of opposites. It's amazing. What exactly is it here? Because we're going to fire your nigger. What if this is we're going to use more media? Basically, everything you're in your life, so making it way free to buy a thing. We glorify innovation. Okay. If I take a little ball, poke a ball in, and put some peanut butter, yeah, and I give that to a monkey, gorilla, and I give him a stick. See, take that stick, and it's going to come over to you, use that stick. Take that peanut butter, it's great. That's the innovation. The stick was not originally designed to be used to dig out peanut butter, but he figured out a way to do it. That's an innovation. That's innovation. Like monkey with a stick. You want to impress me? Invent the molecular structure of the stick. The US government in the 1950s invested a ton of industry development, chemistry, technology, the internet as you know it. They developed all these things and then they gave them away free to the private sector. The private sector got rich. And that's awesome. But when the private sector then goes back and complains about the public sector, it's like a little kid in a playground playing with sand, and he's complaining about the poor services, not realizing that they invented a molecular structure of sand. Everything that he's building, every sand has what he builds. Hey, somebody the government invented it. Wait for it. Oh, did you like those vaccines? Well, apparently you didn't like vaccines. But did you like that in 1 year of a mass pandemic, we were able to develop awesome vaccines that had a 95% success rate? mRNA technology was developed by NIH grants. Which company agrees on? Yeah, does it and does it? Okay. Anyway, subgroups. What is the edge between this? I think I've explained this to you a little bit. Just as I can make a betweenness metric for an individual node, how many paths does it lie on? I can look at the lines, the ties between this, and I can assign them, well, they make paths between other nodes in the network. And then I can use a computer algorithm to randomly remove, well, not randomly, based on the highest, remove those until the network starts to break apart. And then I can look at those subgroups that emerge. Okay? Let's watch this happen. So the potential implications is this can help analysts identify larger communities or relatively dense clusters within dark networks, which highlights potential seams or vulnerabilities between those communities. I've already explained it. You can read this on your own. Watch. Next slide. We're going to get a component here, and a component here. And that's typically where it'll stop. It'll say, hey, here are these subgroups that I can identify for you, based on removing the most edge between the centrality and ties. And then it'll show, it allows you to then visualize what those subgroups are. Oh wait, it's not showing it. This might be because I'm not doing it on the actual PowerPoint. But okay, you see this tie here? In the waist. Killing it. It's bad stuff. Bad all sitting in a song. Okay. So I did the cranberries version stuff. Right. My son is like, he's like, hard box, I can do bad version. I'm like, I like the cranberries stuff. There's a line in it. It's the same old routine since 1916. Guess what happened in 1916 in Ireland? The Irish Republican Army was a resistance against the British colonialists that had occupied Ireland in some way, shape, or form for about 700 years up to that point. So in the middle of World War One, they say, hey, we're organized enough, we're Irish, we need to kick these British out, they've been oppressing us for years. Only like 50, 60 years prior, 1,000,000 Irish people starved to death under British. And 1,000,000 others tripped over each other's dead bodies in the United States. And I got a pissed off Irish professor, right? That's how it works, right? That was the 1800s and the early 1900s. So there's this resistance to the Irish. And then the Easter uprising, on Easter, they have this big battle, and guess what happens to the Irish? They get their ass. And there's one guy who's the leader of the IRA, and kind of by luck, he gets rounded up, prisoners, and he's identified as an important actor in the Irish Republican resistance, and he's about to get put into a chair where they're going to shoot him. It's an execution. And once the prison cell notices, like, nobody's looking right now. And he walks from the dangerous group over into the safe group, real quiet. And he doesn't get executed. His name was Michael Collins. Nick Collins. And he says, Well, at this, we're not going to fight the British straight up. We just got our asses kicked. We do not have the conventional capacity for war. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run an intelligence worker. I'm going to find out who all their informers are, and I'm going to find out all the intel guys working in the castle in Dublin. She's intelligence worker. I'm going to be like, they're spies trolling us through informants. I'm going to identify all their names. I'm going to see the chief assassins, my 12 apostles. Wow. And show them. Which is very selective, very targeted. In fact, it's hard to actually call this terrorism in the sense that they're targeting legitimate targets at almost every step, right? It's either an informant, now they're not going to do the trial, but they are targeting either informants or intelligence officials for the British regime. And so he does this to great effect. And if you ever want to watch a great movie with Liam Neeson before he started saving his daughter from, evermore kidnappings, he played Michael Collins, late 1990s, right? Michael Collins, at the moment of this film. So, and there's these wonderful scenes in it where his assassins come back and all around, and he's like reading the newspaper and he's like, British intelligence agent, riddled with bullets. Riddled. What are you doing with the right thing? He gets from the newspaper and he's like, let's just don't miss. No, really. He's mad at him. Because you're an insurgency. Bullets are and the short supply. You only got so many. Maybe you don't shoot in the head once, then walk away. Don't hit them a bunch of them. That's how they did it. And what they did was they actually forced the British to come to the negotiating table in 1917 and sign the Irish Free State Treaty. And it didn't make Ireland fully independent, but it basically said Ireland's going to be an autonomous region within the British Empire. They'll take an oath of allegiance to the British Empire, but basically we're going to let them run their own thing. And so Michael Collins said, this is going to be a tough pill to swallow, but this puts us on a path to independence, which happened, right? So nobody flagged us. And Lord Byron, the British Irish Treaty says, I just signed my political death warrant by cutting this. And Michael Collins looks at Dead in the eye and says, I just signed my actual death. Because Ireland immediately went into a civil war. And it was between the people who supported us and those terms of the deal. The terms of the deal were, one, it wasn't full sovereignty, and two, it left out the northern 6 counties of Ireland, known as Ulster. Why? Those were majority Protestant areas. See, the British, when they came in, were having follow. So many people from Scotland were Presbyterians and Protestants. They displaced the Irish Catholics and they put them there. They were Irish by geography, but Scottish by blood. And there was a red line demarcating counties on the maps. From above the red line was a red neck. Not because they were sunburned, but they were rednecks because they were from above the red line. That's where a lot of American Southern immigration came from. Ulster. People who were used to stealing other people's land and fighting for it violently. Does this sound familiar in your heart of us American? Who did we take land for as we went through and conquered from the east to the west? Native Americans. We had to fight for it violently at places. Okay? Sound familiar? Ever heard the word a lynching? Comes from the word lynch, a Scottish last name. Okay? So these northern 6 counties were left out of the deal. Now, Michael Collins gets killed, trying to stop in his home area. But his side wins. Ireland becomes an independent country. That happened in 1920, early 1920s. Why do we still hear about violence from 1960s through the 1990s in Northern Ireland? Because up in the north, This problem was, I think people said Scottish or Scottish, technically Scottish. Now they do themselves as English or Northern Irish. And they're Protestant or Presbyterian, sometimes they're Protestant. And then you've got a 40% population of Catholics. Now, the Catholics had a reputation for making more babies than the Protestants. So this created this kind of psychological tension in Protestants. Protestants started to believe that they were going to get outbred essentially by the Catholics. And they started putting together paramilitaries. The Irish Catholics put together the Irish Republican. And they start to make their moves. Now, the Irish Republicans' army splinters at many different points. At different points, the Irish Republican Army says, hey, stop the terrorism stuff. And the provisional Irish Republican Army are like, after that, we're going to do all the terrorists we want. And they become very aggressive at bombings. So if you want to take out these bombing numbers, how do you do it? Now, the Irish Catholics, they're getting murdered in their homes. Watch The Devil's Own with Brad Pitt and Harrison Ford. And it's one of these Irish Republican Army terrorists, and he wants to buy Stinger missiles. He essentially goes undercover, and he ends up living in a Irish American Boston cop's house. And it's because he's friends with an Irish American judge, and they've got connections to the Irish American judge. And what they're saying, yeah, here it is. You're this insurgency, 1990s. Take out the happen say, arguing with Irishmen. People at the bar that really started promoting the fight. So that the Northern Irish Catholics resist the British. So Americans, the American diaspora was in some cases funding terrorism in another country. That's for us in matter. Irish were doing what they could to support the cause. They call the cause. It was this unifying thing. But it couldn't stand up to one thing. Bill Clinton can solve any problem. I mean, the guy is just likable. I mean, what's your color? She's always just rolling her eyes behind him. But America loves this guy. Loves this guy. And between him and Tony Blair, getting the leadership of the Irish Catholics, of the Sinn Féin, the political wing of the Irish Republican Army, and the head of the Protestants, political leader of the Protestants, they had the Good Friday Accords. And in about 25 years of this crappy insurgency, they basically came to a power sharing agreement for Sinn Féin and the Protestants could be in the same room that are governing together jointly over Northern Ireland and ending this insurgency. Look, so IRA stands, but some of these smaller groups, like the Pura, continuing Irish Army, they kept going. They were much smaller problems, more manageable after the Good Friday Accords. Okay, so we're going to look at some network data built by some of this information. We're going to see subgroups. We've got 937 nodes, 1,000 edges, 456 components, 415 isolates. Nodes are colored by component. So you have these different, I guess, brigades within. No, detection. Okay, so this is attributes. So this is based on what brigade do we know they were part of? They were Atrium, were they None, were they Jerry, were they Armagh, were they Tyrone? So this was that's attribute takeoff. What we could also do Louvain community detection algorithm and see what the map tells us are the subgroups here. Now, Louvain method is another community detection algorithm. So when I say the map, I want to teach you the algorithm. I don't really know the algorithm. That's why I raise my hands. It's environment to prove. Okay. So that level algorithm will divide a network into groups for you. And this is the visualization. So if we look here, this is by brigade bytes per attribute, and this is the Louvain method of subgroups. And notice it is identifying some of the same. So the way they're dividing themselves up officially by brigade lines up how they quote unquote math is dividing them up. It makes 100% quite a bit. So this is the brigade subgroup, and then this is the subgroup based on the Louvain algorithm. And this is again another brigade typical one, and this is the Louvain algorithm matching our respective Louvain algorithm subgroup. The provisional what are you about? The Irish range about the Protestants, mistreating the Irish Catholics in Northern Six Counties. That leads to the 1917 Irish Free State Treaty, which unfortunately did not include the north of Ireland. And so so basically Ireland becomes pretty much a Catholic state, absolutely independent. Everything's one great Ireland. If you've ever visited Ireland, it's one of the places being Irish Americans are actually Irish. Um, and it's a the Nordics counties also economically developed by having a lot of local issues. You had a situation where you had like 60% Protestant paramilitaries, and or Protestants, and 40% Catholics. The Catholics were having more babies demographically; they could actually measure that out. And so, whenever a group is quote unquote dominant, and political, in this case, the Protestants in the Western Border, substantial immigration. They also had support of the military. Whenever they see that something is happening in Democrat, where Catholics were actually going to essentially outlive at some point demographically, that was never the thing. However, you started to see a lot more aggression. You also started to see a lot more tension where the IRA was playing a bigger role, which was resisting this essentially all Protestant government. And that resulted in reprisals from Protestant paramilitaries. So Protestant paramilitaries would get lists of who they thought were the IRA supporters, and then they would go and kill them in there. And they would wear black masks, and they were oftentimes the cops. So the cops, when they were off duty, would put on masks at night and go kill people. Does this sound familiar in the American experience? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody? Yeah. What was it? Who was that? This is exactly what the group was. Oftentimes it was cops, or at least within society, at some level. Who the Klan actually had local support. And they were insurgents. They would blend into the local population. All paramilitaries, when they're on the same side as the government, when they essentially view the violence that they're creating in support of the government. That gives the government some plausible deniability, allows them to use it as a proxy. But you do that enough times, and you start to trigger and engender a backlash. And the IRA, the Irish Catholics, start to get more and more support. And so you get this very intractable, long-term insurgency, unconventional thought. What do the Catholics want? The Catholics want to change in the direction of the government, i.e., to either take power themselves or to at least be part of some power sharing agreement where they're not going to be getting killed and stuff like that. They actually have some say in how they are governed, how mistreated, things like that. What do the Protestants want? They want to build laws power. Who they ace. Some kind of publisher agreement. And as I mentioned, Bill Clinton was able to pull it off. Everybody loves Bill. Between Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, they were able to get the leaders of the Catholic IRA political leader, who's actually the military leader, so like the biggest terrorist of them all. They got him and the Protestant political leader, and I blank on their names. But what they were called together was really interesting. They were called the Chuckle Brothers. Because here's this, like for a Catholic terrorist, right? Irish Catholic um, terrorist running the IRA. And there's this hardcore conservative Protestant Western slash political leader. They actually really like each other on a basis. So once they asked the God in the room, you put no. And it's kicking our little bit. And you get these two guys in the room, they're charismatic groups themselves, actually come to a political deal and settle it. And they're able to establish what was known as the Good Friday. And in the Good Friday Accords, the IRA essentially agreed to this, and they became part of the government. They governed together. So you don't hear that much about terrorism in Ireland. Some groups like the IRA and other groups called the continuing IRA did not come in from the rule and didn't agree to this, but they were very small in person. So the overall was deal. So it was absolutely worthwhile. He said it was a good deal for everyone. Made everybody's life better. There's still some terrorism here and there, but really, why did the IRA and why did the IRA do what they were? They become organized by it. They were making the coffee off of and guns on the efforts they set up. They're making working out. The IRA went to a point where they would recap people who dealt drugs in their neighborhoods. So this is what they would do. It's like a registration. They fly you out and you spread your arms out and you face down to refer to the ratio, right? And what they would do is they see a hollow point round and they shoot in the back of you. It was essentially they just never walk. And then actually I did my whole registration. But they went from that to being the drug that's how they were putting their operations. And what's on my advisor, he said something about insurgencies. And it's completely made up statistics, but it's probably also true. Said that any insurgency is fundraising. You want to involved, you want to have guys on payroll, you got to pay your employees. All of those things requires logistics, requires money. So you got to figure out how to make money in all those processes. And that's why you get a nexus between terrorism and crime. There's a whole literature on that. If you ever want to read about that, the Crime Terror Continuum by Samara Makarenko in 2004, that's a classic seminal article that kind of lays out this crime terror continuum. Now, I mentioned in the last lecture, this is kind of a recap of the last lecture. The Palestinian, the Irish public actually is very supportive of what's going on in Palestine. Well, the rest of the Western world is not so much into that. Why? It's because they've always seen themselves in the Palestinian struggle. You had an occupation, they're resisting the occupation. They view it as essentially an ethno-nationalist struggle for sovereignty. Now, I've talked about Irish Catholics and Protestants, but really this was not about religion. This was more about nationalism. There was just a religion that was kind of put on top. There were all these jokes about, a guy in Northern Ireland, and he's standing by a bar, and some Protestant toughs come up, and they're like, "Well, are you Protestant or Catholic?" And he's like, "No, I just can't. I'm just leaning against this wall." And he's like, and then the guys go, "Well, are you leaning against the wall like a Protestant or like a Catholic?" The idea is if you see the wrong thing, we're going to beat you. We're going to go get it. We're going to just give a regular guy and not to be at risk of getting in a fight. That was the nature of it. And there were some alliances between these groups. Now that goes back to between the 60s and the 90s. That whole time of troubles, as they call it, was the 1960s to the 1990s with the Good Friday Accords. It runs for about 25 years. Now, there's a great British counterinsurgency expert named Sir Robert Thompson. And he did a brilliant British counterinsurgency campaign again in Malaysia against the communists. He wrote this book called Defeating Communist Insurgency. And he laid out exactly how to do it. And it was kind of one of the precursors to American and British post 1960s counterinsurgency theory. And it's an amazing book if you get a chance. It's just great wisdom. It will literally lay out to you how to insurgency. And one of the things he says in there is 25 years. Once you're fighting insurgency, it's going to take you 25 years and you're going to play for the breaks. You can play for the breaks and you take advantage of their mistakes, it might last a little bit less. You are committing to 25 years of occupation and counterinsurgency. If you're not willing to do that, just pack up and go home now. You're going to be dealing with an insurgency, assuming you do everything right, for at least 25 years. And sure enough, if you look at the time of troubles and how long it really lasted from the 1960s to the late 1990s, it's 25 years. If you want to watch a great movie about it, watch The Devil's Own. It's got Brad Pitt. Yeah, I mentioned this in the last class. The opening scene, though, counterinsurgency scholars kind of make fun of the opening scene because there are more people die in the opening scene than they like the entire time of trouble for an entire, like this massive film. But there's a scene where the American cop, this Irish American cop, he's talking to this Irish tourist, or he's a construction worker, from Ireland, trying to get his foot in going to the United States and staying in his house. And he asked him about the troubles, and he said, "Oh, I just tried to hungry ourselves." And he goes, "Yeah, but they killed her. They killed him in front of her. They walked with him, shot at him." And the cop says, "Catch the bad guys who did it," and he says, "They are bad guys." You knew it was awful the cops that did it, so you didn't even go to the point. It's kind of like in Mexico. If you're a victim of violent crime in Mexico, do you necessarily know what is your thought? What's that? They're not going to do anything about it. What else? Right. That's the immediate thought. They might be those. I've dealt with victim statements all the time, and it's like I reported this to the police. And they laugh at me for the paper. They accused me of the crime. Like, who would go for anything to the cops under those circumstances? So you get these 90% impunity. That's not a good way to win over hearts and minds of the nation. Okay, so you have suicide attacks as one strategy. Why would someone engage in suicide? Yeah. Yeah, they become a martyr for the cause. If you look at it from an individual perspective, it's irrational. Like the ultimate sacrifice. And there's no payoff really for you. If you only think of it in terms of a vicarious payoff, you go like, there is a way though you can do that. And this does what happens. Groups like Hamas would give suicide bombers essentially money to their families. It's just it's essentially like an insurance policy. In life, you can't get a job. In this life, here under this occupation, institutions, there's poverty, you can't get a job, but I have a way for you to take care of your. You think, well, okay, but you're not going to be around to enjoy it. Why the hell do I buy life insurance? Why do I have tons of life insurance on me? Even in debt, neighbors, taking care of your family, even in debt. But yeah, it's not irrational. It's perfectly rational. But we just have to broaden out our scope of what the rational framework is. Oftentimes, when we're looking at rationality, we don't understand the framework the person is making decisions from. It is good to say, if I was in their shoes, what would I do? That's a good first step to think that through. That's only step one. Your shoes and my shoes may not fit. You want to be careful not to engage in cognitive bias known as mirror imaging. Mirror imaging is when we look in the mirror and we see the other person and we pretend it's us. We're seeing ourselves, and we assume that they think like we do. They may be operating under fundamentally different payoffs than we do. Lyndon Baines Johnson gets elected, becomes American president, gets elected, wins congressional races. The guy was a master politician. He was all about making deals, getting people to do what he wanted, getting that stuff. So he goes and he tries to negotiate with Ho Chi Minh. And he says, Ho Chi Minh, I got a great deal for you. We're going to stop this big insurgency. We're going to come to some kind of peace accord. We're going to build you a giant hydroelectric dam to Mekong Valley. It's going to give tons of jobs to your people. It's going to be massive economic development. It's going to be wonderful. What do you think Ho Chi Minh said? I've been fighting a national liberation struggle for 1,000 years versus Chinese. And it was the French. Then it was the Japanese. Then it was the French again. You let them come back. I asked you not to. Then you took over from the French when they kicked their ass in 1954 and Tiananmen. Now we're fighting you. What is your kind of flying out about a dam? About jobs. This is a national liberation struggle. 1,000 years. Not what you didn't say. Imagine. That's what pushing it in the Chinese Communist leadership. BJ, you are mirror imaging. You're not a congressman from Texas, Arizona. That's not how the world works. We wanted national liberation. We offered to cut you a deal, but you said you had to let it French back in because you wanted their support. You were willing. Iran was willing. They were like, yeah, let's do the Constitution. Okay. Just help us get rid of the French. No, we let the French back. Only the French should have to give them back their colonial holdings. So that you can get them free to agree, to accept money for their own rebuilding. Only the but we want to be careful not to engage in mirror imaging. If we engage in mirror imaging, we won't understand why people engage in suicide bomb. Nonetheless, what is the position of an actual suicide bomb or an IED maker? Do you think they're going to get their warrant? Are they going to get a burglary? With the bar itself, but we do beforehand. You know, after those subjects, there are let's say IED suicide bomb makers. It's typically yeah. The raw maker though might be high up. But you want to have a lot of people have contact with them? No. So in terms of the network analysis, how perfect. So he's very out. And he's kept in the group. People she's kept in the group. Because they are out. And a suicide bomber can be kept in the periphery is very specific. The people who are not responsible in that area are the logisticians. The people who explosives. The people who set up the safe houses. All of those people, you don't want them dying. You can't have them dying. It doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't be a functional, it would be a highly disruptive network. Okay, so Palestinian suicide bomb network. If we look at the suicide bombers are listed in gray. And notice they're out on the periphery. The people in white are the hormones. They're in white. Everybody who's a suicide bomber is toward the outside of the network. Now, some of this could just be displayed because we're seeing some significant connections, but clearly people who have more connections based on this layout are being brought to the center. The Puras, people that construct IEDs in the core of the Earth are people that plant IEDs for the Pura in the core of the entire network. We've got 790 nodes and 24 IEDs each in structures. You've got 4 core or higher. You've got 117 nodes. It's the number of people who are connected to 4 other people 100%, and those 4 are connected to them. You've got only 117 nodes. And within that, you do have 12 IED constructors. So 50% of them are within these kind of four cores. So in the entire network, we've got 390 nodes and 72 IED placers. Within the 4 core or higher, you've got 117 nodes. And you've got 27 IED placers. That is 37%. That would be higher in the more people are in these kind of core denser cores if they are IED constructors versus placers. Let's think about what does an IED placer do versus what does an IED do. Well, if they want to place to get a higher chance of very good. Very good. I know. Well, I think it. Right. If you're a good constructor, odds on you are easily. You're in some apartment, the leader belongs. We might be in some farmhouse. Now remember what happens to lawmakers. Anybody know? What happens to their fingers? Go ahead, you do it. They get ready to extend all the way. So you know what else is no. Yeah, and they use fingers. Yeah. It's expected that a lawmaker over a long enough time is going to lose there's possibly all that. Over the line. It's almost there. That one. So the military, I guess, it's really it's yeah, that's a very good kind of telltale. The other telltale I heard in the Global War on Terror was anybody whose fingerprints were unreadable, that's the person you're really going to look at. They were trying to put on their fingerprints. They were but that doesn't actually help because your immediate reaction you can't get fingerprint read is words first. When I was going through the immigration process, my wife was in for her life trip. Very important, right? And each thing not be able just absolutely can. And we knew exactly what it was. We had a new baby. We were washing bottles. Well, he was off the rest of it. We were washing bottles. And if you're washing enough with really hot water, you're essentially taking off your feet. So that's it. I can't remember how to do that. Why was he go to so anyway, this makes sense that we have more IED placers, I guess, in the core of the network. I would still want to protect if you want, and have very limited number of contacts with the network. But then fewer IED placers there because they're more exposed. Okay. Any questions about core?